Cora?
Yes. Mhm.
All right. So let me get this started. All right. Welcome back to another Crypto Vagabonds Q&A. Just remember that this Q&A occurs every Wednesday, and today we're going to be talking about China. So without any further ado, let me get straight into the presentation for today. Let me know when you can see my screen. Here we go. Can you see it?
Yes.
All right. So here we go. There's a lot of things happening in China on the last week of September, and I want to discuss those things with you guys because I think we will affect crypto prices. Of course, we also have conflicts, which is causing the price of BTC to go down. So we have a little dip now, but there's a few things happening in China that I think will pull the world into economic recession. So Xi Jinping is trying to prevent recession or a slowing down of the economic growth in China. So
I think you have the wrong link.
I think I
Yeah.
had the wrong link. Let me just get the right link then. I realize I have the wrong link. Okay.
I send it to you. You can stop sharing and
Start again. Okay. I'll do that. No problem. I didn't stop sharing yet, huh? Okay. Let's do it again. I think now I got the right one, Cora. So let me start it again. Okay, so sorry for the technical challenge. Let me start this again. I think now I got the right presentation. Here we go. So as every presentation that we have here, we need to start with a disclaimer. Nothing that we produce is to be considered financial tax or legal advice. All that we produce here is for informational and educational purpose only, nothing more. So this crypto Q&A does occur every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. You can also, of course, interact with us in Clubhouse Tuesday to Friday at 7 Eastern Time, but also on YouTube as we're here, Instagram, and X. Today, we're going to be talking about the plan that China has to rescue its economy. China has going on a recession for a long time. The first thing that started to happen was the collapse of the real estate. I have made many videos about this here on the channel, at least 3 videos. We're going to try to make the links available to you guys on the description below. But the roadmap that we have today is going to be the following. We're going to be talking about the stimulus that Xi Jinping and the Communist Party is trying to do in order to prevent the recession or prevent the slowing down of the economy. We're going to be talking about the market's reaction to this. We're going to be talking about what they are trying to achieve with their measures and what the challenges are. And of course, we're going to give you towards the end my view on how that would impact the economy and of course, also cryptocurrencies. So the economic trends, once again, China's economy is slowing down, it's showing signs of slowing down. I'm not going to say necessarily a recession yet, but it's a weakening activity, and I think it will end on a recession, regardless of what the Communist Party will do. That's my view. So anyway, I have made videos before on the channel where I show this graph, how foreigner investment is leaving China. And the reason why it's leaving China is because Xi Jinping has imposed a lot of capital controls in China. And guess what? Capital does not enjoy being controlled. And those capital controls was causing the flee of money in China. I have received a lot of messages on the video. People didn't like it, but here we are again talking about China. And those are the 2 main graphs. You can see here the foreign investment going down, and you can see here that the outflows continue to accelerate, and you can see it's going down here on this graph. So if international money is not coming in, the economy is very likely to go down. Another thing also that happens is China's growth. If you look at China in 1950s and 60s, China was pretty much a slum. They were having a lot of problems. Was the approach of the US injecting money in China, and then all the other countries injecting money in China that caused a massive growth? That money is no longer coming there. And China has made a few mistakes along the way. We're going to be talking about those as well. You can see here also that China's 10-year Treasury yield has dropped to 2%, which is the lowest it has been for a very long time. You can see here 2005, 2009 was being very volatile, but not as low as it is now. And that's because the market is seeing a slowing down of the economy and not the expansion of the economy. And the reason why is because China is mostly driven, the economic growth is mostly driven by the internal real estate, which we're going to be covering further in this presentation. The GDP deflator also indicates major deflationary trend, the largest since 1999. You can see here, it is low in 2023. It was there in 2008. The crisis also affect China, but you can see also in 99 here, there was another one. Now, you can see that 2010, 2012 was very high, 2008 was high, and it was low in 2016. Even though it went up here in 2020, it continues to go down low, and now it's continuing to be low. So, and that to me is going to be the situation for China, at least for the next 5 years, 10 years, I would say to the end of this decade. And what's happening? Well, in a recession, cash remains king. The Chinese population are becoming more cautious. They're not buying, they're not spending, which means there's no increased demand for housing and for goods, but there's increased demand for liquidity. They want to have money on their hands. They're not seeing the continuous expansion of the economy. And the reason why, as I mentioned, China's main growth is driven by the real estate. There's a bubble on the real estate in China. And you can see here, China's property is still demand continuing to decline. That's a significant metric because what happened is if there's no demand for steel, what happened is they're not building. There's no expansion of the property sector and there's no expansion on the infrastructure. So that's one indicator we can look that shows there's a decline. Regardless of the reports from Xi Jinping, we can see a decline on demand for metal. If metal is being demanded less, that means not as much productivity. And it's not just that. The real estate sector already has been seeing a decline in price. We made videos 2 or 3 years ago in 2020 with the situation of Country Garden and other major companies, major construction company in China. And we have been predicting this for years now, and here we are. The price of the real estate is going down. And the reason why is because there was a bubble. There was a lot of real estate being built, and China is starting to implement the one-child law, which means the population is not increasing as much, demand for real estate is not increasing as much, but they continue investing heavily on the real estate sector, and now we can see that down. Residential real estate prices have dropped by 88% over the past year, the largest decline in 3 years. You can see here, prices are going down on the real estate. And China has 1.4 billion human beings, population of China, but because they have, again, built more buildings than the population can occupy, and China has very unfriendly immigration laws. So with one-child law, which means slowing the growth of the population, no friendly immigration laws, you have a demographic population that is not increasing at the same pace that you can build structures. In one of our videos, I have shown in the past, the demolishing 14 buildings, I think, more than 10 buildings all at once. Why? Because they build too much. And if there's no demand, the price is going to go down. So that's the problem. Also, commercial real estate prices have been falling with a 5% drop over the last year. So, and here you can see M2, the money supply is decreasing in China. That means deflation. Bank credit growth is at slowest pace in decades, with M2 money supply growth also decelerating. Make no mistake, M2 is still increasing, but not at the pace that was increasing before. That means people are not taking loans, banks are not giving out loans. If banks are not giving loans, the economy is not expanding, and the population is not having enough trust that the future is going to be expanding or the future is going to be good. So they want to keep their money on their hands. Now, investment in infrastructure is also not growing as much. China used to have double-digit growth. Now it's down to single digit. And Xi Jinping and the Communist Party is trying to guarantee a 5% growth. I doubt, even with the cooking the numbers, they'll be able to pull that off. So with all that problem, the Communist Party has to do something. So they announced the largest stimulus package in years. And again, why they're making this package? Because money is not coming from abroad, so it has to come from internally, and that means they're printing money in China. So the largest stimulus package in the economy, the stock market and the real estate sector. So you can see here, China unleashes boldest stimulus in the years to boost ailing the economy. So the People Banks of China announced to support measures, including a cut of interest rates, but some experts fear that they may not be enough. And yes, I agree with that. It is not going to be enough. So what I have done, they reduce the 7-day interest rates to the lowest level in history, 1.5%. They're trying to lower the interest rates to stimulate people and company to get money. I don't think that's going to happen. They also lowered the 1-year loan interest rate for banks to 2%, another historical low. You guys can see here on the graph. And they also reduce the reserve requirement for banks. Now, this is ridiculous. The reserve went from 7% to 6.6%. Again, it's not a significant one, but you must remember, when the entire crisis began in 2019, 2020, the real estate crisis in China, Xi Jinping had said that he would not intervene. I have my doubts then. I have made videos about that then. And here we see he's trying to intervene slowly. So this reduction, I think, is going to accelerate into more in the future, but is already 4 basis points less reserve required for the banks. Another thing that he also done, he has lowered the rates on mortgage that people has taken previously. So you can see here, reduce mortgage interest rates, lowering the cost to many borrowers, which means they want the Chinese population to buy houses without anyone living those houses and without them being able to occupy those houses. You can see here, China to cut existing mortgage rates by the end of October, which means people in China took a mortgage, the interest rates are high, they have a deal with the banks, now they're lowering those rates to see if people feel confident in investing on the real estate sector more. I don't think it's going to work. More, they ease the rules for purchasing a second home. They want the Chinese population to have a second home. And the reason why this is relevant, and the reason I'm sharing this to you guys, is because it will impact the crypto space, but also to show you that how this is an act of despair. And if you guys have seen, a lot of people are talking in America that everyone should have their home. They want to stimulate people to have their homes. That creates artificial bubble. China has done it, and the West seems to be on the same path. So you can see here, China property stocks rally after major cities ease home buying restrictions. They want less capital. They also have done liquidity injections. At least 100 billion are now available in loans for brokers, banks, funds, and companies to buy stocks or repurchase their own shares. So what's happening is the stock prices of many companies are going down. The companies are at the verge of bankruptcy. The Chinese Communist Party approved $100 billion into loans where now those companies can repurchase their shares. They can buy their stocks, and that may push the price up. It will push up on the short term, but the long term, sophisticated money is not a fool. They know that this will not work. And it's not just that. They also made another meeting. The Politburo announced a $294 billion bond issuance to support the struggling real estate sector. And this is not for them to repurchase their bonds, but it's for them to repay their debts. Excuse me, we saw here the Country Garden and other major companies collapsing. Xi Jinping doesn't want the real estate sector to collapse, so he's giving them money in order to pay for their debt. Now, in the short term, the market respond very positive. You can see here, China stocks on steroids, CSI 300 index, clocks best week since 2008. So it has been declining for a long time. Since 2008, you see best. And you can see here, the Politburo meeting push prices up. But to me, this is just momentarily. It will not sustain the market because the bubble is way bigger than 204 billion, at least in my view. So as we see, the market reaction is being positive on the short term. Construction companies have saw a rapid stock gain, some by 5%, some by 10%. Now, what is their goal for the Communist Party? The Communist Party, they have a goal. They don't want the Chinese economy to go into recession. And if that happens, the entire world is going to go into recession. The US is going to go into recession. Because what happened is China is the largest manufacturer on the planet. So for instance, I'm from Brazil. Brazil produces a lot of metal. And guess what? If the construction sector in China goes down, there's less demand for the minerals that Brazil produces, which is metal. So it would affect Brazil. It would affect, for instance, countries that I know in Africa that produce marble, granite. Those contracts are not going to be fulfilled. So Africa is going to suffer. US is going to suffer as well. So if China goes down, I think the entire planet is going to go down on a recession. And that means Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, which are seen as risky assets, the price is very likely to go down, at least on the beginning of the recession. And you guys can see that we have an attack of Iran. Gold prices is on its all-time high because gold is seen as a secure, safe asset for a time of crisis. And you can see the Bitcoin price went down. That means the world, the sophisticated money, categorize Bitcoin as a risky asset. So what is the goal of the Communist Party? The Communist Party, they cannot appear to be saving the economy. Xi Jinping is trying to avoid that position for a very long time. So they are not allowing for much bigger fiscal stimulus. I think they're going to have to inject more money because they also do not want to see the full correction of the economy. Because if that happens, it's going to be very bad for the Communist Party. So they're trying to prevent a more significant correction or price drop. And they're trying to see if the market stabilizes as they continue to inject. So they want to have a soft landing. Pretty much that's their goal. Now, in the short term, we saw some changes. In my view, those are not significant ones, but it looks positive for Xi Jinping. And I think the market will continue to its slow recovery. And if that does not happen, Xi Jinping and the Communist Party will just pushing the can down the road or kicking the can down the road. And every time you kick the can, that can is going to get bigger. So now those funds will help the local provinces with their debt issues, and their aim is to stabilize the residential and commercial real estate prices. They cannot do that because those real estates, those buildings, those constructions, they're way above the demand for the population. I have talked about this 3 years ago. The situation should be continues to be the same. There's an office space for every man, woman, and child in China that's available. That means if the entire Chinese population decides to work in office, they have those empty buildings. That is on a commercial state. On the residential real estate, the entire population of Australia can move into China, and there's going to be homes left over. That's how much the bubble has been blown. Now, people are not going to buy houses to be just ghost towns. And as we have seen in previous video, they're demolishing massive buildings, villages, entire villages at once, because there's no such thing as a demand for all the buildings that have been constructed. So my conclusion, the market react positively in the short term. In the long term, the reality will be reality. You cannot deny the truth. You cannot prevent the sun from rising. You cannot prevent the recession. The recession will be here in the long term, even though for a lot of people, the long-term effects remain uncertain. To me, what is uncertain is how bad this will be. In my view, China is entering a recession. Europe is entering a recession. The US is also going to go into recession. You cannot avoid a recession. One of the very first classes I made for the Academy is about recessions. It's unavoidable. If you're a member of the Academy, I suggest you to go to the beginning, to the very first lesson, how recessions are important. And I do not see Xi Jinping being able to do this. They have done many mistakes. One is diminish the demographic growth in China by one-child law, very unfriendly immigration laws, and investing heavily on the real estate. Now, if you build a lot of buildings and you don't have a growing population, you're going to have a gigantic bubble. And that's what's happening in China, in my view. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate comments because every time I talk about China negatively, I have those comments. Please keep them coming. But that's my conclusion. We are going to be seeing a recession. And it's not just China. I think Europe and the US will be there as well. So just to recap, we talk about the stimulus measures of the Communist Party, the short-term market reaction, which is going to be just short-term. What is their goal? I don't think they're going to be able to achieve it. No government has been able to control the economy, and I do not think Xi Jinping is going to be the exception. So the challenges are how far they can push this can down the road and how much more stimulus they can add. To me, the only way to fix this is to allow the economy to have its correction. And Xi Jinping, if he wants more investment in China, he needs to remove the amount of control that the government has on the economy. Those are my views. I'm open to be challenged. And with this, I end the presentation. If you want to be in control of your money and learn more about cryptocurrencies, please consider joining the Academy. Link for that on the description below. So with this, now I'm going to yield the mic to you guys, and I'm going to be answering your questions. Welcome, Maria. Welcome, Alchemist. People don't want to hear about China.
Thanks. Oh, no, I'm very interested in China. I remember when I reported on it a number of years ago when Evergrande started to implode. I said, guys, this is going to start, a downward motion that's going to hit the whole world. And at that time, Boof, I did some research to find out the tentacles of tentacles of China where they were in the United States. And I was surprised at where I found all the Chinese money and tentacles going. And and I was surprised that it actually owned one of the biggest ports in California. I was shocked when I heard that. They were forced to sell it though, but I was just looking at the tentacles of where China's going. So no, I'm very interested in China. Thanks.
To rebuild the Silk Road, and I think it's a massive project. They're not going to be able to finish. That's my view. I think a portion of that may be concluded, but I don't think it's going to be, it's just too massive. But they do have tentacles. I came to Europe and I have been 5 years living on a van, traveling Europe. Most people may not know this, but there is a train line that connects Germany to China, the straight train. And there's like entire infrastructure villages that are only run by Chinese. I also saw that on the Balkans, like literally entire towns on the Balkans where they're extracting mine facilities, and it's all Chinese. Like you don't believe you are in Europe because all the street signs are in Chinese. The entire population is Chinese. And it's pretty much like in the case of the Balkans, they found a mining facility and they're mining whatever resources they were mining at that location. And because there's a massive amount of labor being required for that, they start to have their own houses and create their own villages. And there's a whole infrastructure there just to serve China. When I'm traveling now here in Europe, another thing I noticed is I never thought I would see that in my life, but on airports, they have signs in the Chinese language. I'm like, wow, so... Because normally you have like English, French, some Latino language. Like in some place of very south of here in Spain, in Portugal, we have some signs in Arabic alphabet because of the proximity with Morocco and whatnot. But I'm like, what is the relation between, for instance, France and China? Like airports in Paris have their signs in Chinese. I'm like, wow, China is pretty much everywhere. Also in Brazil, they're exploiting petrol. There's like entire base of petrol exploitation on the sea and also on land, which are all run by Chinese. So they have the tentacles very far.
Oh yeah, well in Africa, I mean they're just taking over there. But I was listening to a YouTube channel this morning, Boof, but they were talking about the biggest electro dam up in the mountains in China. I don't know if you heard about this or not, but I was
Yeah.
did you hear about this? So I
Yeah.
thought, my goodness, they've gone all the way up there, and they said it would. Oh, but they said the power would only help 1 to 2% of the population. So this huge, massive dam, is only going to take care of 1 to 2% of the population with, I guess, electricity, whatever else it was, right? I didn't watch the whole thing, but I was in shock. And this was in the mountains, like huge, up very
Mhm.
very high altitude. So,
Mhm.
dear God, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead, Alchemist.
oh, I was
Yeah.
just gonna say, like, the thing with like the Africa, the whole like China thing with Africa is like China kind of tried to give Africa like predatory loans basically that they knew they couldn't pay back. And like shout out to the Nigerians and some of the Africans because they haven't paid a single one back. They haven't paid a
That's for
single one
sure.
back at all. I mean, that's kind of the thing with them in Africa and this whole like infrastructure where they're giving people like predatory loans that they know they can't pay back, and then everybody's basically just like, yeah, we're not paying you back. What are you
Well,
gonna do?
the United
Is it-
States have been doing that for years. International Monetary Fund. I mean, that's the reality of it, is that these people can't pay back. So they take the natural resources. That's what they want. They want the ports, they want the natural resources in all these countries. So that's why they give them these loans that they know they can't pay back. It's all part of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Alchemist.
No, I was just gonna say like like a couple years ago, I was basically saying like I was on Clubhouse like when I first came there, and like everyone was like bullish on China and stuff, and I was like, yeah, I think China's like gonna go through like a pretty bad like situation and like by 2030, like no doubt. Like and it obviously it happened way earlier than that. What I should have said was like, I actually probably wasn't bearish enough because people were like, oh, China's like selling a bunch of treasuries, like, and I was basically just like, well, they're not doing that from a position of strength. They're doing it from a position of weakness. They're not doing that from like they need cash basically. And the other part, Boof, great presentation. The other part of this is also like China's economy is basically built on two things: real estate, like Boof mentioned, and manufacturing. And their biggest customer is the U.S. Now, when the U.S. hikes interest rates like they just did, what does that mean? That means that the Targets, Walmart's, the place that buys stuff from China buys less. What does that mean? That means that the workers in the Chinese businesses,
Right.
they're not making as much money, which means they get laid off, which is why China's youth unemployment rate is 24%, and then they stopped reporting it in 2023. So it's probably like 40% right now. China's youth unemployment rate is probably I don't know because they don't report it. It's probably 40%. Realistically speaking, it's probably 40%. And like on top of that, like their population is like completely screwed up. So they have a bunch of old people. They don't have a lot of young people to work. And the young people that are there, they're unemployed because of the fact that they squeezed, they're not getting as many orders from the US and they were their biggest buyer. So like everybody was like, China produces all of our stuff and this and that. And I'm like, I think China needs us more than they need. Like I'm American, which is why I'm saying us. Like China needs us more than we need them. And so far that's kind of what happened.
Yeah. But make no mistake, Alchemist, if China goes down, like the US is coming down with it. I mean, not as far down, but it will come down with it as well.
Oh yeah, if China comes down, that's going to have a ripple effect across the entire world economy, 100%. No doubt about that. No doubt.
So I think it's a bit of a two-edged sword, right? Like on one hand, like you can clap, and I think also one reason that if I was American, and one reason I think, which is good to see China going down, to me, not just is the fact that you cannot have economical growth without military growth. I'll repeat that in case people don't understand this. You cannot have an economical growth without increasing your ability to defend that growth. So the more China becomes the manufacturer of the planet and grows economically, that means a massive growth militarily because now you have goods to protect. So if China is going down on a recession, I think is very positive news for us in the long term because that diminishes the chances of them increasing their military might and one day maybe challenge the US. That's positive. The question that I have, which I do not have the answer for, is okay, China may not be able to grow militarily as much because it is not growing economically as much. But my question is, when will the US stop to diminish their military might? Because every conflict that the US start to support or to be involved with, that weakens the US. So, okay, China is not growing as fast, but when is the US stop to recede to the point where China, maybe one alliance between China and Russia can come and challenge the US? That's the question that I have, to which I don't have the answer for. And that's what bothers me at night. I do not want to be in a world where China has the power to plausibly challenge the power of the US as a superpower, though.
Yeah, I'm not really too worried about that myself. I mean, I would probably say in the next 25, 30 years. Now, this is obviously a bold prediction, so like I don't know if this is actually going to happen. But like I wouldn't be surprised if like later on like China's broken up into like 2 or 3 like different like countries. Wouldn't surprise me. With like maybe communist, and then you know you have like the Hong Kong style like area, like the rebellion from that. Who knows? You know what I mean? But I don't see any way that you know what they're doing gets better.
Well,
I mean,
so
how?
China was 3 countries, Alchemist. Now it's only 2. So China was China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan.
Mhm.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, like, I'm oversimplifying here. So Taiwan is a group of people who did not agree with the communist approach that fled at the time to the island of, which is not the island of Taiwan. Okay? So it was a dispute between, let's say, capitalism and communism, to simplify things. Communism won on the main China, and we all know what happens when communist regimes win. They guillotine or they just kill their opposition.
I'm referring to mainland China.
So okay, so mainland China then became communist. There was a group that fled to Taiwan, which was a capitalist, and there was a deal between China and the UK with Hong Kong. Now, Hong Kong was given back to China. The deal went over after I think it was 9 years. So now China and Hong Kong is one, and Xi Jinping wants, before he dies, he wants to be known in the history of China as the man who brought Taiwan back, because Hong Kong was peaceful. The contract was over, let's say expired. It needs to be returned. The UK honored their part. Hong Kong was given back to China. No conflicts there. Taiwan's a different story. I think, honestly, Xi Jinping does not want to go to his grave without bringing Taiwan back into China. And the speed or the pace or the date in which he's going to be doing that, I think depends heavily on few factors. One is him feeling confident that he can pull that off with his military might, because an amphibian invasion is a very difficult thing. Taiwan is a very small island. China is a big army. I think it's the largest army on the planet. But also, how much would the US be pissing off China? That's another thing that I don't have the answer for. Because if, like, you start with Nancy Pelosi and all this, like, support for Taiwan that is coming from the US, meanwhile, US is stretching themselves, helping South Korea, helping Australia, get involved in possible conflict in Venezuela, conflict in the Middle East, conflict in Ukraine, conflict in Africa.
Spread too thin.
Yeah, at one point, China is very happy with this whole situation with Iran. Make no mistake. I made a video here and I made materials for the Academy. The biggest winner of the Ukraine war is China, because it's weakened the US. China cannot afford to have Russia lose that war. The biggest winner of this whole conflict in the Middle East is, again, China, because it's weakened the US. So
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
So let's say, yeah, the US continues weakening and China remains strong. I mean, they won't attack the US. That's something else we've talked about before.
They are already attacking the US.
Yeah,
The
they're
US,
gonna attack allies, or is that what
you
you mean?
know, they are already attacking the US. They're not attacking militarily. They have not invaded or sent missiles. But make no mistake, the drug war in the US, the fentanyl problem, the communist ideas that are being spread in the US, all of that is infiltrated by China.
Yeah. So
I-
there are
No,
multiple.
just a second, I'm going to say that, Cora. Does it make sense, Cora?
Yeah, it makes sense. But since we're talking about,
Military forces.
yeah,
No,
military.
I don't think China is going to attack the US anytime soon, but they will. Make no mistake, Xi Jinping will at least try to bring Taiwan back into China. There's no way that this man is going to die without trying that. Unless he dies out of a sudden death, let's say between now and next year, which I doubt, because the diet and the behavior of Chinese people are way better than the behavior of the Americans. Like Chinese people, they live a very long life. They eat well. They know. Roz is laughing because she knows what I'm talking about, right? So
So there are
So
multiple ways to attack an enemy, right? You can outright attack them, which is they're not going to do that because first of all, America's military is stronger. Second of all, geographic location wise, like they just can't, like they're just not going to be able to do it. They can't pull it off. They don't have the military might to do it anyways. They can't outright fight them. America kind of has this weird thing where like half the planet they like control, like Canada, they control like all of South America, like through the like, if something crazy starts to happen, they're like, hey, what are you doing over here? They start sending troops over. They get rid of it right away. So that's number one. So they can outright attack them, which they're not going to do. The second way they can do it is attack from within. So what does that mean? That means that, well, the Chinese fentanyl thing, right? Like they can bring fentanyl in and they can poison the population from within. They can influence politics. They can try to do things like this. That's another way they're doing it, and that's what they're doing with this whole weak border thing. And they're taking advantage of that. So that's another way they can attack them. The third way they can attack them is economically. They can't do it economically because America's the world reserve currency. So they can't really do it that way. They could do cyber attacks as well. They could like try to shut off the grid. And those are basically the only ways that you can attack America. They're not going to be able to outright fight China or outright fight America. They won't win. I mean, they're probably scared to attack Taiwan because of America's involved.
yes.
Honest. Like they don't want to even do that. And they easily could if America wasn't there, like saying like, if you invade Taiwan, we are not afraid of you, basically. And that's probably the only reason why China hasn't done it yet. So, yeah.
But I must say one thing, Alchemist. Out of the 4 ways of attack, they're doing 2. And I must say, very successfully.
Yeah.
Very successfully. For people who want to know more about this, and maybe we should make a presentation about this for the Academy, for the YouTube channel, like red cocaine, like explains that really well. I'm not sure how many people have access to that book. I know Tony is reading. I'm not sure how many people are actually reading. We talk about it on Clubhouse. If you want to understand how the whole fentanyl, marijuana, cocaine, all these drugs entering the US is a direct plan of China and Russia, you can read and the receipts are there on the book, the red cocaine. And I think that will corrode the US from within. I think we're already seeing that. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not in America, I just see this on documentaries. There's some pockets of the US which are becoming stateless, where the police doesn't go anymore, where there's no authority there anymore, like in terms of state authority. Like we have a lot of those pockets in Brazil. I'm not sure. I think the US is having that as well with the drug, fentanyl, right?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I stay away from areas like that, but yeah, no, there's a huge problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I see images from here, like online and things like that. And as that grows in your country, that's a problem. And one other problem which is by plan of China and Russia, the nuclear family is something that is dead in the US, but it's very alive in China. Like the nuclear family, like married for life. Yeah,
Really?
yeah. Chinese families, they married for life. Like the structure, like nuclear family, is very strong in China. Like the younger population, even the more modern one, they're still concerned about what their parents think of their actions. They do not want to displease their parents. Of course, there is a number growing of people becoming more like westernized where they don't care, but those are small numbers compared to the vast population. So in that sense, I'll say China is stronger
Yeah,
than
I would say socially, there's a lot of countries that are stronger than America. I mean, it's not very hard to beat. I mean, there's a lot of craziness going on in America right now. So,
yeah.